3 months doesn't sound like a really long time, but when we're doing 3 episodes a week, it's been very jam-packed. And guys, we're having so much fun. The love you're showing, we just love doing this. And even more so when we're seeing people start their own businesses just off the back of this podcast.
Yeah, it's been incredible, Jesse, this journey so far, seeing all the love that's coming in and all the great feedback and people doing amazing things, because of a conversation which we've had, which is just incredible to us. And all we want to do is just keep this thing rolling. So if you guys can help us out in any way, that'd be appreciated. Please give us a follow, just a tap of the finger. I think it's 1 second, if that. You guys are all quick with your fingers these days. So give us a tap, give us a follow, and we'll keep this thing going for you guys. Jess, we've had a lot of people hitting us up asking whether they should do their own podcast or start their own podcast. Let's dive in today, talk about it, our experiences. Let's just talk about it in general to begin.
Yeah, there's huge pros and cons, Jack. I mean, everyone can see there's just a huge amount of podcasts popping up.
Yeah, they're becoming mainstream and very saturated.
I mean, we're one of them.
Correct.
We've learned a lot in this last 3 to 4 months. I think the more saturated something gets, the more competitive it gets. Mm-hmm. So hence why we've pushed 3 podcasts out a week now for a little while, just because we know we've got to be really serious about this.
Yeah, there's a stat that I think 90% of podcasts don't make it past 20 episodes.
Yeah.
So most of the podcasts that you'll see started, they don't make it past 20 episodes, which is pretty significant.
100%. It shows you it is hard work. Like, the reality is this is tough, and you've got to get guests on. You've got to be coming ready with things that people want to hear. Yeah, ideas. You can't just turn these mics on and start blabbering away. I know it might seem like that, but I promise you there is some method to the madness. But yeah, and on another level, it just seems like it's a lot of white males just buying a podcast kit and starting up. But look, at the end of the day, the craze is
warranted.
Warranted.
Yeah.
Yes, I was lost for words, Jack. Thank God you're here. I think
It's a good show, that.
we did do it. Yeah, you're a good man. We did do a bit of research. I tell you, we do research, and we found out that in 2020 there was over 1 million new podcasts around. The year before, in 2019, there was only about 300,000.
Wow.
So we're looking at and that was 3 years ago. I would like to think that it's only been going straight up.
Yep.
Straight
100%.
up.
I suppose COVID was probably the start date for that. Kicked, a lot of these new podcasts into gear. People had a lot of time on their hands and thought, why not make a podcast? So we've made one, a Colour Plane, obviously. The last 3-4 months we've been going. We're about 28 episodes in, and we thought there's no better way to talk about this topic and break it down than use the Colour Plane podcast as our case study.
Yeah, we think it's, we could talk in swings and roundabouts about the pros and cons, but there's no better way than having us. We've gone through and spent the money on a kit and had the arduous task of getting guests on and doing all that and applying it to our everyday lives. So I think you'll get the most value out of this through hearing our quick little story.
Cool. Let's start with why we started the podcast in the first place. What was our reasoning behind starting one?
Well, you've only heard this a million times on this podcast, but we wanted to give value. I won't say it again for the rest of the potty, I promise. There's a ban on that word for the next 24 hours. But we wanted to give that V word, and then we also knew from our experiences starting up, for me, when I started about 21, I had absolutely no information on how to proceed, how to move ahead. It was just, which was kind of fun, you're just swinging in the dark, no idea what you're doing, learning rapidly, learning through a lot of hard knocks. But I just thought there's no reason why we can't start a podcast and give little tips and tricks. We're not going to change your business overnight. That starts with you and working hard. But I think we can guide people on the journey we've been on to kind of more from the stuff of what not to do, I would say.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah, there's just so many gate-kept secrets and information that probably isn't available to you until you're 5 to 10 years into the journey. And for us, that was definitely what it was like starting out. So, I think it's awesome that we can leverage this podcast and technology to be able to fast track people and give them that head start that maybe me and you didn't. Because, all we're trying to do is give value. I actually hadn't met the quota yet, so I
know about that.
My voice is cracking. That's me for the next 24 hours. But yeah, we're trying to make the world a better place. And I think through that, comes information and people being able to do what we couldn't do.
100%. And we had a friend, he's now a friend. We didn't know him before. He flew down from Perth. His name was Harry. Popped into the office and he was just starting off his new business, hell-bent on learning, and said he'd listened to every episode. He'd been telling all his friends about it that don't run businesses. But I don't know. I think it's just amazing to hear that it is really helping people. And when you hear those real life examples, I think he said, I feel so much further ahead than I would have been without this. So that's all I need to hear. Just one kid say that. Yep. I'm like, awesome. Let's keep running with that. Jack, also, there's a huge element of building trust. We wholesale a lot, especially at the moment. No website, a lot of DMs, not happy with that. That's okay. That'll come. But predominantly right now, our business is wholesale.
Yeah. So building trust is obviously huge for us. We don't have any product yet. So I guess me and you have been the face of the business really, and sitting down with people. And this podcast is a great way for us to put information out there without having to be face to face and in a physical location as such that we can direct people towards. And it seems as though people have got to know myself and you through this podcast a lot more than they would otherwise.
Definitely.
And that's probably helped them to feel like, yeah, these guys care about what they're doing, they're passionate, and I am going to pull the trigger and go on a journey with these guys in terms of buying garments and all that kind of thing. So from that perspective, it's definitely helped us a lot.
Yeah, regardless if you're wholesaling like us or retailing, just selling directly to a customer, I think it's an incredible resource to build trust. And in this day and age with saturation, as we said, there's a lot of brands around, a lot of podcasts. You need to build trust. I tend to think it's more important than the actual quality of the garment, because at the end of the day, it's an online business for the most part, a lot of these businesses, and you can't touch that garment. You're not aware of it. So what you are aware of is that trust and that narrative that
who's
the brand's
behind
built.
it.
Who's behind it? What do they stand for? Does that align with your values? So podcast is a great way to do that.
Values is huge in that. I think that's becoming more and more prevalent these days. Like people want to align value-wise with the companies that they're supporting.
Couldn't agree more, man.
I think that's a great word to touch on quickly. And that ties right into the third point that we want to talk about with why we started is we want to sit down with people who have similar values to us and talk to people and hear their stories. And speaking for both of us, I know we both take a lot of energy and inspiration from others and their stories. And that's, now that we're just really documenting it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not experts. We've only done this for a matter of years. We've been through a little bit, but there's people out there that have been through so much more than us. And in just different industries, everyone's got different life experiences. So, it's one of our favorite things having guests on. And we haven't had one for a while, so probably wondering why. That's okay. They're coming. Sit patient.
So method behind the madness.
Correct, always. In all seriousness, I think these people have such rich stories to tell and we learn from them. So we'd like to think if we can take a lot out of it, then our audience should as well or can. That's the method there. So yeah, we look forward to continue to do that in the future. That's mostly the positives of running a podcast. I mean, mind you, I'll quickly touch on in terms of a structure for social media. I'm sure you've seen 1,000,001 clips from every podcast, predominantly white men for some reason, but there is a lot of clips out there. It's just efficient. If you think of it like a funnel, your podcast, let's just call it an hour podcast, can get chopped down into these little bite-sized pieces that you can put all over the place, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm sure you've seen that. Again, very saturated. So you need to do that very effectively. And this is where things can get a bit dark, a bit negative when we start talking about costs, Jack. Mm-hmm.
Expenses, yeah. So there's startup costs, obviously. We're holding these mics, we're sitting in this room, we've got these chairs, cameras.
LED lights.
We probably don't have anything too expensive up there, but that's okay. Paint for the white wall. We have to paint the wall. There's a little cost. So there's costs involved. And, depending on how well you want to, not well is not a great word, depending on how hard you want to go to begin, and what your budget is, the more money you put into it, the better quality. So
back to saturation, I think, I would say gone are the days you just whip out your iPhone and, buy a little stand and start talking. You can definitely do it.
It probably doesn't cut it anymore, just with how competitive it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a level of probably, I guess your audience probably watches a lot of different podcasts, right? So they're evaluating what you're doing through that lens.
Yep.
But I'm a big believer, to be honest, of just starting. And if just starting is an iPhone, you know, the old camera in your garage, like just start. That's more important than the quality, I believe, because the learning experience, the feedback loop that you'll take on. So anyway, don't get too caught up in the costs, but
right. But there is a financial cost there,
no doubt. And if you know, at the end of the day, if you're bringing in guests and you're setting up your iPhone, then you're asking them for their iPhone to film them. Like things are getting pretty obscure. So like you want to take yourself quite seriously, and that's nerve wracking, right? Because it's like straight off the bat, you're almost putting down the financial risk before you've even really kicked off. So that's a tough one, and that I would put in the negative column for podcasting.
Time as well is probably in the negative column, just because it takes up a lot of time, not only filming the episodes, but preparing for them, debriefing, trying to find guests.
100%. And as you would have heard on this podcast before in previous eps, and if you're a first-time listener, I think time is your biggest enemy. I think we've done an episode on it. If not, we're going to need to definitely do that. Time is definitely always your biggest enemy, and a podcast takes up a lot of it. So you need to ensure that it's valuable. It means a lot to you. Yes, that is all I have to say for that.
Yeah, but I'd say other than that, I think most the positives definitely win out.
Well, yeah, I mean, hence why we do it. But again, if you're introverted, perhaps, you know, you don't want to be holding those conversations. That's fine too. A vast majority of brands that I love don't have a podcast. I think we just have something to share, and we want to show our journey as well. And I guess that's another point we didn't touch on, is it's a pretty great way to show your journey from day one through, you know. It's a long form. You get to hear these discussions, how people mature, how their businesses grow. So we're really hoping that as we grow, you know, maybe we move into a new space, maybe the topics we talk about become a bit more thorough and we learn more and we can share more with you. So that's, a huge part for us.
Yeah. So should you guys start a podcast? I think there's obviously a few questions you have to ask yourselves, like why are you doing it, first of all? Maybe.
Sorry to cut you off. Continue on.
Oh, I just lost my thought now. Jess, thanks for that, mate.
I'll throw in my little quote. I think horses for courses. Like, we're not, you know, it's hard to just give a blanket statement, like go start a podcast. But I'd like to think, as you touched on at the start, on a lot of websites, there's blogs. And I think blogs are becoming outdated, don't you think?
Yeah, it's kind of the next evolution of a blog. I guess you can tell stories, you know, in a more in-depth manner, and, you know, you can see the faces behind the stories as well, which is huge. So
trust, keyword.
Again, trust. Yeah. So it's definitely becoming, as we said, a mainstream thing, and probably something that lots of big organizations are going to start to really do as well. And we already have seen a lot of that too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully our case study kind of helped shine some light on what it's looked like for us, the pros, the cons, and, you know, why we started one. And yeah, hopefully it has left you with some questions to ask yourselves as well.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's a long-term play for us. We want to, as we said, tell our story over many years. View back from even looking at the first few podcasts we've done to episode 30-ish that we're at now is an incredible journey of 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main point here is don't half-ass it. You can't half-ass a podcast, just like anything in life. And people are going to see right through that, you know, whether it's the equipment, whether it's, you know, the conversations, the quality of the conversation.
Definitely.
How many you're getting out. Yeah, you definitely have to be serious, especially with the competition that's coming in, you know, these days with podcasting.
Yeah, it's saturated. So you have to love it, and that love will shine through if you do. But if you're sitting on the fence, probably stay on the fence. Thanks, guys.